The 2023-2024 PR and Marketing Committee for the First Indiana Student Board of Directors is proud to have its first alumni meeting with Mr. Collin Fultz. He is the Senior Director of FRC, yeah?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Ethan, for having me. Yes, I'm the Senior Program Director for First Robotics Competition, working for First. I'm also a proud First alum. I was a student on Team 234, Cyber Blue, in Indianapolis, Indiana, from like 2001 to 2004. And did a little bit of everything on that team. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So why don't we go ahead and get started with a couple questions if you're okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I believe my first question is, what areas of First have you worked in, and what's like the experience you've built? Obviously, as like the senior director for FRC, you kind of have to build up to that position a little bit. So, like, what's the steps you've gone through to get there?
Sure, and there are really two kind of tracks that ran in parallel as we're talking about my kind of professional or adult life at first. Um, the the first is kind of the professional side of it. I started working at First in 2010 as the kit of parts engineer. So myself and my manager at the time had responsibility for putting that kit together every year, working with suppliers to get things donated, get the kits together, and then out for the teams to use. I did that for about 5 seasons, and then took a little break from First. Came back about a year and a half later. And served as a project manager in First Lego League, specifically working in what at the time was called First Lego League Junior, is now called First Lego League Explore. And my specific duties were around a grant that we had received from the Lego Foundation that was really trying to grow participation in First Lego League Explore in what we called the between the bells setting. So think about, students doing first as part of their classroom experience, as a fourth grade science section, once a week for an hour or 90 minutes, and really trying to figure out like, okay, we've got these programs that work really well in an after school setting. What do we need to change about them to make them fit better into something that happens during the school day or in like a structured after school environment? So I did that for about 3 years. And in the midst of that, also started working on, okay, what does this look like if we do not just First Lego League Explore, but First Lego League Challenge and First Tech Challenge as well. And that expanded then to be what we now call Class Pack, which is a growing, participation model that allows students to participate in First during their school day in those programs. Like I said, I was in that role for about 3 years as a project manager, and then moved over to our development team. And so the development team at First is the one that gets that really works with all of the national level sponsors. And so think about NASA and Rockwell Automation and Google and GM. And so I had a set of sponsors that I worked with. Rockwell was one, Google, Caterpillar. Um, Lego Foundation still, there were several in there, and really worked with them to make sure that we as an organization were kind of meeting what they were looking for with their donations as well, and figuring out ways that we could be even more impactful with the financial contribution that they were sending to First. And a big part of what all of those companies were doing was directly supporting teams, with grants that come through First, because it's a whole lot easier for those companies to give First a pot of money that is then distributed amongst 200 teams than it would be for NASA to go out and write 200 checks to a bunch of different high schools. And so I led the team that also managed a lot of that work. About 2 years ago at this point, I moved back into First Robotics Competition as the program manager. And so there was really focused on, making sure that events were happening, making sure that championship was happening, kind of everything not engineering that had to do with the program. And that was working directly for Frank Merrick, who was my predecessor. Frank retired, and I moved into the kind of an interim position while that hiring process was going for his replacement. And got the job almost a year ago exactly, as the permanent new senior director for the program. The parallel path that was happening to kind of all of that professional work was a whole bunch of first volunteering as well. And so I think I've filled at this point basically every event volunteer role that you can have at an FRC event. I was actually a referee at an off-season event a couple of weeks ago, and that was like that last role that I needed to check off. And I also served on the board of directors for First Indiana for 4 years, including 2 years as board president. And so that was, a ton of great experience as Indiana was making the shift from regional events to district events to really kind of learn about the organization, from a business aspect, from a financial aspect, like what does it take to set up this nonprofit and get it into a place where it can be successful and sustainable.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you don't mind, my two co-committee members have a couple questions for you that they'd also like to ask. So
Yeah.
Rashad, David.
Yeah. So one of my questions were, what is your favorite core value, you personally?
Yeah, my favorite first core value is fun. I think that the reason so many volunteers and mentors continue doing what we do and staying involved in the program is the fact that at its core, first is just a whole lot of fun. The impact that we have on the students is awesome, and that's great to see. And my guess is that every volunteer and mentor could tell you about, that student when they saw the spark ignite and the path that it changed their life. But I think the core of it and what keeps adults coming back and what makes it so powerful on the students is that at the end, what we're doing is a whole lot of fun. Seeing this game release that in your mind you're like, how are we ever going to build a robot to do all of these things, right? To pick up these two different game pieces and put them at these different heights, and then you figure it out and it works, and like that sense of achievement I think can be a lot of fun. I am currently coaching a first Lego League Challenge team, and that's the piece that I see with those kids as well, right? And they're 10 and 11 years old, is that sense of achievement, the fun that they have working together to overcome this problem is what makes them excited to come to our meeting every week.
Thank you.
So I had a question. What do you see in FRC changing, innovating, or improving over the next 10 plus years?
Yeah, 10 years is a huge time horizon there. I think the big thing that we're rolling out this year is the KitBot, and that is kind of the first step in really trying to make FIRST robotics competition more accessible, and specifically from a perception standpoint of that it can seem more accessible to people, because I think right now people see the program, and if they experience it, they experience it at the end point if they're not involved, right? So they see it at an event or they see it at the championship when everything is together and everything is working, and they don't see the 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, whatever it's been leading up to that point, of the teams iterating and trying and failing and try it again, try something different, that got them to that point. And so they're only seeing the end, and they don't see the path of how they could get there as well. And so what we're trying to do with the KitBot is ease that transition and ease that on ramp into the program. And so really, like I said, I think that is the first step. And based on what we learn from doing that, we'll continue to iterate and hopefully continue to improve so that in 10 years we've knocked down or reduced those barriers to entry into the program, because we want it to be, not just scalable and accessible for, new teams that are out there, but also sustainable for teams, who may go through a mentor transition, where a teacher leaves a school or a longtime mentor leaves, and they think, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this now that, this mentor that's been doing it for 10 or 15 years is leaving, and they know that they have these other options, this other support available to them. And so that's the first step that we're taking, and we've got other ideas on how to continue to improve that, but we're really, I think, going to do what a lot of teams do and test it out, see how it goes. We'll get feedback from a ton of people in the community, and then say, okay, here's what we've learned, and here's what we're going to do better next year, to continue to evolve along that path.
That's awesome. Thank you. And if you don't mind, I just have one more question. So obviously, FIRST is a huge program that has a global impact. But not everything that's global is entirely known to everyone. So say if you could share one message with the whole world about FIRST, what its message is, and like all the good that it can truly do for the world, or all the positivity that it brings, what would that message be?
So this came up in actually a conversation that I was having with one of my colleagues last week about how the power of the FIRST community, and how for so many people, when they move to a new city or they start a job at a new company, or move to a whole new country, the chosen family that they have in that area are people that they know through FIRST. That it's this incredible community of people, who have all been through these kind of shared experiences. You know that they are all going to approach things from a core value standpoint, from a gracious professionalism standpoint, and it can really make that transition into a new phase of life, a little bit easier, because you've got people there that you can lean on. There are events across all programs that you can go to, and you can be with people that may be strangers to you, but who you have this shared background with. And so I think the power and the global aspect of the FIRST community are that piece. I mean, there's like 700,000 youth who are going to participate in FIRST programs this year. There's another 100 to 150,000 adult volunteers and coaches that are going to make it happen. Like, it's a big group of people, that are all kind of committed to bettering the future in this manner. And I think when you stop and think about that, and again, this is something that like I try to stress with my FIRST Lego League team, is we are one of 40,000 teams who all got this exact same mat, who all got these exact same missions, and who have this exact same robot kit, and who are trying to do this exact same thing. Like, think about how cool that is, that you're doing the same thing as kids in every corner of the world. And so I said last year at kickoff, I think the message to alumni would be like, use that community. If there's a place you want to work, if there's a place you want to live, like, there are people in the FIRST community that can help get you there, and that can share their experiences with you. And to people that don't know about FIRST, I would say the best way to learn is to engage with people in our community, to come to an event and not just sit in the stands and watch the matches, but to get in the pits and talk to the teams, talk to the volunteers, talk to the kids who have been impacted by the program. And that's where you really see the impact of what we're doing.
Thank you so much. I believe that's all the questions that I have. David, Rashad, do you guys have any questions?
I had just one more question for you, Mr. Fultz. So how have your roles, you mentioned in the first question that Ethan asked, that you've gone through all of these different roles, kit of parts engineer and your mentoring roles in 234. How have those shaped the decisions you make today as the senior FRC director?
Great question. I think that my experience across all of the programs, or working in two of the programs and then working on the development team, which is kind of helping raise money for the whole organization, does help with a little bit of cross-program vision. When thinking about decision making, I think I can also, when we were talking about the kitbot, the example that I was using was the FIRST Lego League guided mission, right? That this is not a solution to the entire game. This is saying, here's one mission that we're going to give you some help to accomplish, so that then you're hopefully getting in the kids and the coaches' minds like, oh, this is something we can do, right? We can be successful at this. It's building on that success. And so I think that that my experience cross-program there is, has led to a bit of that thinking. And then my experience on the First Indiana Board of Directors, right? That I was part of that as a partner organization, helping deliver the program. We were trying to grow at that point to be all programs in the state. And so the choices and the decisions that had to be made there, I think I bring those into the role as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Collin. Chris Osborne, First Indiana Robotics, and I just wanted to have our PR marketing committee be able to spend some time with you, asking you some questions today. We definitely appreciate you taking the time, and this will be an ongoing series of alumni spotlights. We've got First Indiana Robotics. Of course, we've had teams since the very beginning. With the Technocats, so we have thousands of alum all over the place, and we'll be doing these alumni spotlights with our student board of directors, kind of moving forward to highlight all the different paths that alumni can take. And one of those paths is work for First, which is an exciting one too. So.
Yeah, I love hiring First alum onto the FRC team and really across the organization. We brought on a few new engineers last summer, and they were all First alum, and they're thriving. They're great to work with.
Okay. Well, thanks again, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you all.